Hey, hello, everyone. Big full house tonight. Want to call to order the Tuesday, February 4th meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. If we can start with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Andrews,
Present.
Councilmember Beckman,
Here.
Councilmember Casissa,
Here.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Here.
Mayor Ravazio.
Here. And now if we can have a salute to our flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, as we always do, we will start our meeting with open time for public comment. Any member of the public may address the town council concerning any item that is not on the council's agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. And wondering if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make a public statement at this time? Okay, and then is there anybody online?
We have a hand raised from Roy Wolford.
Mr. Wolford, go ahead.
Good evening. I hope you would indulge me in that I take this time to see if I fix the microphone speaker feedback. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Sounds good.
Thank you. I sent an email earlier today. It was around 3 o'clock, and sent it to all council members and 3 of the staff members. And I got a notification back that Council Member Andrews' email was rejected. The question is, and I hope I can have a dialogue on this, does Jim not have an email address set up so that us town folks can send messages to him? Is it an oversight? Is it something that's been requested? And can I get his email address?
So that we don't get into too much detail online, we'll pursue that after the meeting and make sure you get an answer to that, okay?
Okay. And then there's something that he missed out on because he couldn't read it. And what I was sending was a link to play information that's related to an item on the agenda. It's 6A. So I won't discuss what that is, but I hope that can get played during that session and discussion in item 6A. Thank you.
So I don't know how we feel about playing a video that he submitted, whether that's okay, but I'll let you decide that, or Amy decide that when the time comes, or.
Yeah, we can discuss it during 6A, but
Okay.
typically it's limited to 3 minutes on public
Very
comment.
Okay, so we do have a presentation tonight. I'm guessing that's who you are.
And just for Mayor Ravazio, if I can, just for clarification, Councilmember Andrews does have a valid email address.
Okay, thank you.
So
I assumed he did, but
we did change recently, and this may be helpful, from the tcmmail.org back end of the emails to cortemadera.gov. So that may be one of the issue here.
so his
Isn't that
address would
recently
be,
anymore.
You're right. It's been about five months or so. Yeah,
so his address would be jandrews@cortemadera.gov.
there you go.
Okay. I think we've solved it. Pardon me?
Yes, it sounds like
I
yes,
think you
the
can
answer
still
is yes.
use that, but they're working to phase it out. So the cortemadera.gov is the more. Okay. Oh. Okay, so coming up next, the Marin Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control District presentation from District Manager Peter Bonkrud and a recap of the 2024 season. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Appreciate the time to come join and tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Marin Sonoma Mosquito and Vector. Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff. I'll go as quickly as I can, hopefully to allow time for any questions that you guys might have. But a fair amount of information. We'll talk a little bit about what we do and some of the services that we can provide to the Corte Madera town residents. So first off, I'll introduce myself. As the mayor already mentioned, my name is Peter Bonkrud. I'm the district manager at Marin Sonoma, and I've been there for just around 9 months. But even before Marin Sonoma, I was in mosquito and vector control for about 25 years. So hopefully I'm bringing a level of knowledge that the district would expect. Next slide, please. Just a quick update on our district. We are one of the oldest districts in California, actually centered around San Rafael. The actual original charge of our mosquito control district was just to reduce pestiferous mosquitoes because there was such a large amount that were coming off of the salt marsh habitats that people couldn't even live in the Bay Area. And so our district and actually several districts were created through kind of a real estate effort to try to make the area a bit more habitable. And then obviously when the connection between malaria and mosquitoes was made, a lot of districts pivoted to malaria eradication. And the good news is we did a very good job, or at least my predecessors, since we haven't had malaria in California since the 20s. Unfortunately, we've then pivoted towards new and emerging diseases, things like Western equine encephalomyelitis, St. Louis encephalitis, the most recent being West Nile virus. And then now in Southern California, which I'll talk a little bit about, we have local dengue transmission. Next.
What was that last one?
Down in Southern California, we now have local dengue transmission.
Dengue. Okay.
Yeah, and again, we'll hit a slide later on, but we've now grown to cover both Marin and Sonoma County, 763,000 residents, 2,300 square miles. So it's a big district. Again, one of the biggest districts in California, and we do it with 36 full-time employees, between 6 and 8 seasonals that you brought on, and we have a gigantic board. We have 24 board members, one of those being from Corte Madera. So thank you. Allison Marquis is your representative on our board, and she does a fantastic job. So we appreciate the appointment. We appreciate the town of Corte Madera staying engaged in what we're doing and providing appointees for our board, because we have a lot of work to do. And the easier it is for us to get a quorum, the easier it is for work to move forward. So thank you for that. Next. So what do we provide? So it's in our name, but one of the main things that we provide is mosquito control. So basically trying to identify those areas that could be a public health risk for mosquitoes and targeting those mosquitoes and finding ways to control those mosquitoes. One of those ways is mosquito fish. So a biological control organism that we rear at our district, and then we're able to place in certain habitats where it's compatible. And they do a fantastic job for us in terms of the control efforts. Additionally, we do yellow jacket control. That's for ground nesting yellow jackets. We also do surveillance for rodents in consultation with property owners to identify ways that they can prevent rodents from getting in to their homes or commercial residences, or I'm sorry, commercial buildings, or even leased properties. So anybody that has an issue with rats or rodents or mice, they can call us and we can come help them out. And then we also have a very robust school and education program, which will hit some statistics later on, but we make an effort to try to get out to all ages, all different levels of interest in mosquito and vector control to get the message out. Next. So what is integrative vector management? Integrative vector management is a lot of words, and I'm not going to read the slide, but basically what I'll tell you is what we do is integrated vector management. And the idea behind it is using the data that we're collecting in the field and using that data to drive our decision making. So there's not one size fits all solution for any mosquito or vector control issue. All of those issues are taken independently and funneled through this prism of potential control strategies. And so this toolbox is there for us, and any one of these tools could be utilized depending on the type of control situation that we've encountered. So integrated vector management is a mindful approach to making sure that what we're doing is effective, environmentally compatible, and really what makes the best sense for our residents. So what do we focus on? Of the 23, I'll have to update that slide, of the 23 different species that we deal with in both Marin and Sonoma County, we actually only focus on about 6. And that's because those specific species are the ones that are involved in the West Nile virus transmission cycle, or because they're breeding in such large numbers that to become a public health nuisance for our residents. And so there are quite a few actually mosquitoes that we completely ignore. Sometimes we will catch them in our vector surveillance, but they're not breeding in large enough numbers to become a problem, or they're not within any of the transmission cycles for disease that we're aware of. Next. How do we do it? So we have 25,000 roughly different locations that we've mapped between Marin and Sonoma County, and those are inspected on a regular basis. So anywhere from every 7 to 10 days to every 3 months to every 6 months. Every single habitat has slightly different reinspection window depending on what the needs are for that area. But in general, all of those 25,000 locations are monitored and made sure that they're not breeding those immature mosquitoes. Next slide. Here's a quick little stat shot. So in 2024, we responded to just around 6,200 service requests, almost split evenly between Marin and Sonoma County. We removed around 2,500 in-ground yellow jacket nests, did just around 400 rodent inspections. And I'll highlight the classroom presentations because that's one educator that made it to almost 300 classrooms in 2024, which is pretty impressive. And obviously was able to deal with just around 7,000 students with a variety of different curricula, including yellow jackets, rodents, mosquitoes, and our education specialist teaches all the way from 1st grade up to 6th. Next. So our main focus still is West Nile virus. Here's the great news. In 2024, we had no West Nile virus in either Marin or Sonoma County. So that was exciting to see. I will say statewide, the numbers were lower in general. So it's not completely unusual that Marin and Sonoma County would be seeing 0 in terms of our West Nile activity, but we'll take it. It's a fantastic year if people aren't getting sick from mosquito-borne diseases. Statewide, we still did see 124 human cases, and of those, unfortunately, 12 fatalities. So it is still an issue in California and ultimately in Marin and Sonoma County. And those cycles go up and down kind of depending on the season and the types of mosquitoes that we're dealing with. I'll talk a little bit about the locally acquired dengue cases on a later slide, but just know that in 2023, we had 4 locally acquired dengue cases in Pasadena area and Long Beach. Now we're up to 15. That's the pattern that we're concerned about. So next slide. Our laboratory. So as I mentioned, surveillance drives everything that we do. So we've identified just around 45,000 mosquitoes, 15,000 trap nights. Those mosquitoes are set. We'll identify larval mosquitoes as well. So that's the immature mosquitoes to make sure that our efforts are targeted towards the mosquitoes that we want to control for public health. And then in addition, we did insect identification. I'll touch on our tick-borne disease program on another slide. So next slide, please. So in addition to mosquitoes, we also do tick surveillance. Most of our efforts are focused on the adult Western black-legged tick, Ixodes pacificus, and that's because that tick transmits Lyme disease. So we really try to focus our efforts both in terms of surveillance and monitoring those populations, as well as the infection rate within those populations for both Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi, and then another relapsing fever-style disease that those ticks can also transmit called Borrelia miyamotoi. Next. The highest risk is actually at the nymphal stage, not at the adult stage. So if you're out in those areas where ticks are endemic, which is both Marin and Sonoma County, you'll want to look for that tiny, tiny, tiny little sesame seed size nymphal tick. That's your highest risk for both potentially getting bit and potentially getting Lyme disease. And that's because obviously their size, they're a lot harder to notice than an adult tick. And then also there's a really interesting cycle that you can give me a call and I'll talk all about fence lizards and the borreliocidal impacts of fence lizards in California that overall reduce our infection rate. A little in the weeds for this talk, but it's really interesting that the reason why our ticks in California have a lower infection rate than those in the Midwest and East Coast. Next. This is information that's on our website. So if you're interested in the infection rates that we're currently seeing, and you can look back over previous years as well, you can just go to Marin Sonoma, msmosquito.org and find out all the information that you want to know about our testing for ticks and for Lyme disease and Borrelia miyamotoi. Next. Rodents. Slide got a little funky there, but as I mentioned, our efforts are not in terms of rodent control. So what we do is we'll go out, we have a rodent specialist that will meet with whomever calls. They'll inspect the area. They'll identify areas where those rodents could be gaining access. They'll also look for things like harborage and potential food sources, water sources, anything that's going to increase the rodent activity, give recommendations to that homeowner or renter or commercial property owner. And then they can either do the work themselves or they can hire a pest control company. And they'll have all that information that then they can provide to that pest control operator to do successful rodent control. Because trapping is great, but trapping is not going to be effective until you deal with the exclusion, which is the rodent proofing piece. Next. As I mentioned, we'll remove in-ground yellow jacket nests. So if you have or have seen yellow jackets and you're concerned, you don't need to know whether they're in-ground nesting yellow jackets. You give us a call and our staff will identify whether it's one that we can remove. Obviously, those that are associated with structures, it's a different licensing that we don't have. So we focus on these ones because they often are the biggest public health threat. You know, if somebody's kids or schools moving by, or even lawnmowers or anything that's a loud noise that disturbs these nests, these yellow jackets can be pretty aggressive. Next. As I mentioned, we have a really robust public outreach. So hopefully you've seen our billboards. We do a lot of classic media as well as, next slide, a lot of social media as well. So if you're not, subscribe or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I guess X. And we try to get the message out to as many different places as we can, really trying to encourage people to do what they can for mosquito and vector control. As I mentioned, 2,300 square miles, 763,000 residents, 36 staff members. So we really do rely on the public to help us to leverage the efforts that we're doing out there, because we can't be in every corner of both counties at every moment. Next. Okay, so I was talking about these invasive Aedes and the locally transmitted dengue. This is where I'll get into it. So Aedes aegypti, Aedes albopictus are two new mosquito species that have been found in California. They were found in around 2011 in the LA area. And over the last decade, they've just expanded up the state. That red mark moving across California there is their now established area. And so what we're worried about is, currently, we don't have them in Marin Sonoma, but we have them in Solano, Contra Costa, Santa Clara. You know, basically a lot of surrounding counties are dealing with Aedes aegypti. So the writing's to some degree on the wall, in the sense that we're going to see them pretty close in the next few years to Marin and Sonoma County, and we need to be ready for them. Why do we need to be ready for them? Because these mosquitoes specifically transmit diseases that we don't currently have, well, at least I used to be able to say that, we don't currently have in California until the last 2 years, which is dengue, chikungunya, Zika virus, yellow fever. Those diseases are all transmitted by those two mosquitoes. So if those mosquitoes become entrenched into a county or into an area, and you have a local, if you have a travel case of those diseases, they can be transmitted locally. And so that's the concern. That's what's happening down in Southern California right now. Those 15 locally transmitted dengue cases are likely to expand every year, as we saw the journey of Aedes aegypti up California. The concern is that dengue or some of those other diseases might do something very similar. And so we have active surveillance out looking specifically for those mosquitoes. And we also, within our social media, are pressing the public, if they find them or notice anything like a day biting small black and white mosquito, give us a call, because we'll put out expanded surveillance to make sure that we're not dealing with those two new mosquito species. Next. So how are we dealing with some of these emerging threats? 3D printing is one that may be an interesting caveat for us, or an interesting place where we can put our resources. Mosquito control, you may not even heard of us until today. Well, it's even harder for us to find the tools that we need for our control, because we're such a niche market. And so 3D printing really is built for our type of industry, where our tools are very specific. We know what we need, but it's not often marketable to make those things. And we can create those in large enough numbers straight out of our brain and into the 3D printer out into the field. And actually, our lab director, Dr. Fury, she just presented last week on our new 3D printed trap that we'll be utilizing in 2025, which is cheaper, more effective. Looks really nice. If you can see that CAD drawing right there. So we're really excited about that, because we're going to be rolling out all these new traps, and we'll just be able to replace them as needed with our own 3D printer. The other newish type of technology that's being utilized in California, not yet in Marin or Sonoma County, are these sterile insect techniques. So irradiation is being tested pretty heavily right now in Southern California, again, focused on those Aedes aegypti mosquitoes. So irradiation is an old type of male sterile release that you might have heard of from agriculture. And now we're seeing it in the mosquito world. So they use X-rays to irradiate the mosquitoes, make them sterile, release them into the wild. The hope is they breed with the females and ultimately reduce the populations of mosquitoes. Wolbachia and self-limiting mosquitoes are two other techniques that do the exact same thing, releasing male mosquitoes that are sterile. But all three of those have been tested to some capacity, either in California or in the United States, and are pretty close to being operationally ready. So you'll likely see some of those technologies in the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe not in Marin and Sonoma County, but definitely in California. Next. And so that hits it. I hopefully got through everything and still left a little bit of time for any questions. I truly appreciate you giving me the time to come and speak. And hopefully, if you have mosquito or vector control issues, now you know the phone number or the website to go to give us a call and get some assistance.
Adam has something to add?
Thank you, Mayor Ravazio, and thank you, Peter Bonkerud, for coming tonight. Welcome to, I guess it's Petaluma. We're not too far from each other. So I just wanted to give some context for staff. Our experience has been, and I can tell you from formerly being the planning and building director, we oftentimes got concerned calls from community members, either about neighbors during construction activities. Rats were a big concern that people had about sort of nuisance issues that they were observing mostly during construction, but it can also happen during other times and properties that may be neglected, over time. So a lot of people didn't even realize that there was, the Marin Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control District that provides services to our community members. Our community members pay for this service through property tax mostly. And so we would often refer our residents to call the Mosquito Vector Control District, and they would get services. But I think it's important, I just wanted to point that out, that it's not a well-known district. It's not a well-known service that's provided to our residents and that our residents pay for. And so I just think it's helpful that you're here discussing the services you do provide and the work that you're doing for our community. And so if you ever get questions in the future, I didn't even know about the Yellow Jacket Nests service. So that's an interesting one as well. But now we know where to refer residents to.
Yeah. Okay, questions from council. Jim?
Is there anything that this town council should be keeping an eye on to make it easier for you folks to do your job?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most sustainable and long-lasting control strategies is source reduction. So anytime you have a project that's coming across your desk, whether it's through the planning department or you actually see it and you have concerns that there's potentially some vector creation potential with any kind of project, bringing us in and letting us take a look at the plans and helping you potentially engineer out any vector issues that we see. We do that fairly regularly. So kind of a plan check or review, because if we can avoid mosquito issues before that building or that whatever stormwater structure is even built, all the better, because then we don't have to worry about inspecting it regularly. We don't have to worry about treating it regularly. So really that planning phase and getting us involved and as much as you can. I understand, times and deadlines and everything, but the more involved we can be before things are starting to be built, the better, because we can give you guys a good sense of things that you can do and from an engineering perspective to reduce potential mosquito or vector issues with any new thing that comes across the city's desk, town's desk.
Who's that?
Thank you. I just kind of have a maybe a scientific question. Are there any species that rely on mosquitoes for food or for anything else? Just wondering, I'm from the East Coast and there's just mosquitoes, should be paying rent. There's so many of them in your house. But I'm just wondering, I see so few mosquitoes here happily, but are they needed for anything?
So great question. So there isn't any specific organism that feeds exclusively on mosquitoes. They are definitely a part of just the regular biota that's out there. So opportunistic feeders will feed on mosquitoes, birds, bats, dragonflies. You've probably seen lists of things that feed naturally on mosquitoes, and we definitely encourage all that. And wherever we can, we try to support those natural systems to combat mosquitoes and to eat them. But there's nothing that solely relies on mosquitoes, largely because of their size. There's a lot of other fly-like insects that are soft-bodied that size, so they fit a fairly wide berth of food profiles for a variety of organisms. But, because of that, because they are even just a general part of the biota, not even specific to one organism, we aren't focused on eradicating mosquitoes except for those that are non-native. Our goal is to try to reduce those populations below the thresholds with which they could transmit disease. So if there were some organism out there that we weren't aware of that fed exclusively on mosquitoes, they would still be available as a food source.
Thank you.
And down here, right? Any question? Anything, Eli?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just have a couple questions that I think are more just to make sure that the community, if they're watching this tape or online, to confirm you don't use pesticides or anything like that to control the mosquitoes?
So we do use pesticides as part of our chemical control strategy. So one of those tools in that integrated vector management toolbox is chemical control. So there are certain stages and certain times and habitats that is the most appropriate intervention. I will say that the products that we utilize are very environmentally compatible. So they're microbials, they're juvenile growth hormone regulators. So they're all targeted specifically for mosquitoes. So we have very little non-target impact. And when I say non-target impact, I mean anything that's not a mosquito. And a lot of these products have been utilized for 20, 30 years and have very good profiles in terms of their environmental compatibility. So the BTs is one that's in our toolbox quite a bit. BTI, you might have heard of. We also use a product called methoprin. So those products are well tested and are very appropriate for the types of habitats that we're utilizing them in. But yes, I mean, when you're dealing with disease intervention, when you have active disease happening, sometimes chemical control is the only way to try to reduce those disease cycles from occurring. Because once you have adult mosquitoes flying and they're transmitting diseases, there's no other way to engineer or drop those numbers quick enough to reduce potential human health conflicts or impacts.
And also just to confirm, so if somebody calls you about yellow jackets or rodents or mosquitoes, there's no charge to them.
That's correct. I mean,
under
short of
contract.
obviously what they're already paying on their property taxes, but there's no additional charge. We'll come out and we'll take care of the problem.
That's very good to hear. And what is your Instagram handle?
Well, that's a very good question. My guess is it's MS Mosquito, but
MS?
I'm not on Instagram, so I'll have to talk to our.
Mentioned that
PIO.
you were on social media, so I thought you should put out there what your.
Thank you. No,
your
it's on our
handle is.
website. So go to msmosquito.org and you'll have a link to all of our social media handles there, Instagram, Twitter. Keep doing that. X and Facebook.
What, no TikTok? I mean.
No TikTok yet, and probably well timed. We'll see where that one flies if we want to get involved.
Okay. All right. Do we have any questions online, Lorena? I see nobody in the audience, so I'm assuming.
No hands raised from attendees online and no emailed comments from any members of the public.
Okay, and no action is required on this. So any closing comments from anybody other than a big thank you? I know I have a single cistern from the 1920s on my property, and your guys come out every year and say, can we take a look? And they find out if there's larvae in there. And if they do, I know they put something in there that makes them go away. So I know you're on it because it's literally this big and you're watching for it.
That's the interesting thing is a source that big can create thousands of mosquitoes. So it's interesting.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Your time.
Appreciate your time.
On this stormy night. Okay, so coming up next, we go to the consent calendar, I believe. Yes, here we are. So the consent calendar is, the purpose of it is to group items together, which are routine or have been discussed previously and do not require further discussion. They'll be approved by a single motion unless any member of the public or staff may request an item be removed from the calendar for discussion. So 4A through 4D, anybody need to pull something off? Down here, guys? Anything? Okay, Then can I have a motion? Or do I need to ask, oh, yes, is the public interested in pulling anything off the consent?
Yes, it looks like Roy Wolford wants to provide a comment for the consent calendar.
Roy, are you there?
Yes, good evening again. It takes a little time to unclick the mute. This isn't a request to pull an item. It's a request to change the wording that's in the agenda. So it's item 4, consent calendar. And in the first sentence, got to go all the way to the end, it says, and do not require further discussions. I would suggest and request that do be changed to may. So it would read, and may not require further discussions, because when the item's pulled, there's supposed to be a discussion. Then the next sentence, it says they will be approved by a single motion. And I would suggest prefixing that with, if there are no objections, comma, they will be approved by a single motion. And then it says any member of the public may comment on the consent calendar, no change there. And then town council, town staff, or public may request removal of an item for discussion. No change on that, but I would request that when a member of the public does request an item be pulled, that there is actually discussion made. So I made a comment related to the gun violence proclamation back in May 16th, 2023, and I use facts and data and that sort of thing. And I had said that, saying that all gun violence or all deaths from guns, firearms, is gun violence. And I pointed out that over 56% of the deaths from firearms are suicides. And then I also mentioned some data about automobile data, accidents and deaths, and then also drug-related deaths. And the mayor had asked, is there any discussions? And the town council, without any further discussion, simply said, we want to approve the proclamation, second, and then it was voted on and passed. And I'll just say that short time later, the IJ had articles that the number one cause of natural deaths was from drug overdose, or I should say unnatural drug overdose. And then just recently, within the past month, I've had 2 neighbors that have a family member die. One was from a drug overdose and the other was from suicide. So I simply ask that the council give consideration to a person talking and discuss a little bit about what was presented. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Roy. Appreciate them. Okay, with that, do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
Have you moved the consent calendar?
I'll second it.
And
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, moving on. There are no public hearings tonight. Business item number 6A, is discussion and possible adoption of Resolution 05, 2025, accepting the Marin County Electrification Roadmap. And I think we have a staff report.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. I'll just introduce this item briefly. We're joined this evening by Christina O'Rourke, who's the Sustainability Coordinator for the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership. And she's going to be giving a presentation on the building electrification roadmap. And then we'll bring it back to staff to introduce the resolution and talk more about that. But for now, I will turn it over to Christine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Phoebe, and good evening, Mayor Ravazio and members of the council. Again, I'm Christina O'Rourke, and I am the Sustainability Coordinator for the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership, or MCEP for short. And tonight I'd like to give you an overview of Marin County's Building Electrification Roadmap. The County of Marin was the lead author on the roadmap, but they were assisted by a steering committee, which was comprised partly by members of MCEP, including Phoebe. And those members assisted county staff in doing outreach and developing the recommendations that are in the roadmap. So there are several reasons why we decided to do a countywide electrification roadmap. The impetus for this plan came from a 2022 Marin Civil Grand Jury report. And in that report, the grand jury recommended, among other considerations, that the jurisdictions in Marin work together to develop and implement a countywide electrification plan, similar to what we did for the electric vehicle acceleration strategy. And most of the jurisdictions agreed with that. And so here we are tonight. There are several, so the main reason for doing electrification, of course, is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions that come from the use of natural gas. And this, as you'll see, is going to significantly reduce those emissions. But there are several very important co-benefits as well. Gas appliances do release harmful pollutants into the air, particularly in areas that are not well ventilated. And these can include formaldehyde and carbon monoxide and nitrous dioxide, as well as unburned methane, and they can lead to some serious respiratory illnesses. In addition to health and safety benefits, there are resiliency benefits. For example, studies have shown that after a major earthquake, it can take days to weeks to bring the electrical grid back up and running, but it could take weeks to even months to get natural gas infrastructure repaired and back online. So in addition to those co-benefits, there are local, regional, and statewide climate and policy mandates, which I will be talking about. So looking at the local mandates first, this is a look at Marin County-wide emissions, and it's similar for Corte Madera as well. The dotted red line is showing our statewide target, which is to reduce emissions 40% below 1990 levels by the year 2030. And the red and orange bands at the top are represent the emissions that come from the use of energy. So the red band is the use of electricity. And as you can see, that's been getting smaller over time as our electricity has been getting cleaner and we've been adding more renewables to the grid. And then the orange band is that comes from the use of natural gas, and that really hasn't changed very much. So at this point, almost a third of the emissions come from this use of energy in the county. It's about 25% in Corte Madera. And 85% of those emissions are coming from the burning of fossil gas or natural gas. So for that reason, it really is imperative to reduce natural gas use if we have any chance of meeting these long-term greenhouse gas reduction targets. And for that reason, all of the jurisdictions have decarbonization and electrification measures in their climate action plans. Moving on to the regional and state level, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has adopted these what are called zero NOx or nitrous oxide appliance rules. And effectively what they do is they require only water heaters that don't use natural gas that will be able to be sold or installed in the Bay Area beginning in January 2027. So this is not even 2 years from now. And then in 2029, only zero NOx furnaces. So these are furnaces and water heaters that use electricity, and very often they're most likely will be heat pump hot water heaters and heat pump furnaces. And so in 2029, they'll have to be heat pump furnaces that will be sold or installed. And then 2031, that prohibition or that regulation extends to large commercial water heaters. So the Air District is focusing on water heaters and furnaces because that's where most of our natural gas consumption comes from. And it does not apply to gas stoves or dryers or gas fireplace inserts. It also doesn't require anybody to automatically change out this equipment or these appliances. It only takes effect when an appliance or a system burns out and it needs to be installed. Now, the California Air Resources Board is developing similar rules. They were looking at 2030 as their start date, but then after the Air District adopted these regulations, they're now looking to align the statewide regulations with our air district. So the timing really is still to be determined. I think, however, that kind of looking beyond what appliances are going to be banned in what year, what we really are seeing here is that there's going to be a major transformation in our heating, cooling, and hot water heating industries. And that what's happening at the regional and the statewide level is going to have far more impact than anything that we can do as an individual jurisdiction. So what we really need to do is figure out how best to aid this market transformation, how to remove friction and barriers in the process of acquiring and installing this equipment, and how to support our residents and our contractors through this transition, and how to grow the transformation so that it's not just focused on appliance changeouts. So that really is what we were trying to do when we developed this roadmap. So over the course of approximately 16 months, the Marin County Sustainability Team staff and the Electrification Roadmap Steering Committee actively engaged with each other in the community to bring this roadmap together. There were 3 in-person workshops. We had stakeholders, including community-based organizations representing disadvantaged communities, renters, housing developers, seniors, and environmental groups. The workshops also included building community members, government staff, appointed climate commissioners, realtors, and regional and public agencies and utilities. So the stakeholders really, they volunteered countless hours, and they spent a lot of time learning from each other, listening, sharing resources, and working together to come up with this roadmap. And, it really was a very thoughtful and very open process. And they really came together to come up with a plan that everybody could live with. So collaboration really was the key to the success of this process. The roadmap has 10 recommended actions. I'll just kind of go through, give you a very brief highlight, but there's a lot of very detailed information in the plan about each one of these actions. So the first one is to create a hub for easy access to electrification information and resources. The county has already put together a hub. It's called Electrify Marin, and it brings together a lot of information about rebates and where you can go for other information. We recognize that people like to get their information in different ways. Some just want to kind of see the bullet points or watch a video. Some people want to have a phone call. Some people actually want to have a visit and have somebody kind of walk them through the whole process. So we're trying to kind of hit this information sharing at all of those levels through this hub. And the hub is meant that the county has developed, is really meant for all of the jurisdictions. So everybody's websites or information or newsletters can point to this central hub for their residents. We also, the second recommended action is to implement advanced green building and electrification codes. As you probably know, the building code is revised every 3 years, and it gets kind of more and more stringent, especially around energy efficiency. And there's always an opportunity at that time, well, actually anytime, but usually around these 3 years, to do a reach code, what we call a reach code, which is to go a little further than what the state building code requirements are. The next code is coming up. It has to be adopted by January. It goes into effect by January 2026. So at this point, we are working together to look to see if there are any opportunities where we should kind of push a little bit farther and require higher energy or electrification energy budgets that would require more electrification. Third is to implement permit streamlining and incentives. Then there's provide low-cost financing programs, develop the building energy and electrification workforce pipeline. There are actually already programs that we support, the county supports. There's a BayREN, which is a regional organization that provides a lot of workforce training. Work with PG&E to improve infrastructure planning and grid interconnections. This is going to be critical. It already is. Sometimes we see big projects that really have a lot of demand for electricity. So we need to work with PG&E to make sure that have electricity to meet all of this demand. Next is to implement actions in partnership with community-based organizations. And I do think that we got a good start on this during the process of developing the roadmap. Implement the Marin County-wide electric vehicle acceleration strategy. Implement a time of listing energy assessment policy. This is one that we're actually kind of put off for a couple of years, but it is something that we do get support from the realtors for this. The idea is that at the time of listing, an energy assessment would be required. The property owner or the buyer would not have to actually implement any of these energy efficiency or electrification measures, but they would at that time get an idea of what is possible, and they would also get information on rebates and other resources that are available in order to do that and to do those kind of upgrades. And then the last is to pilot a neighborhood scale electrification and gas infrastructure decommissioning project. So before I sign off here, transitioning to an all-electric future is really a long-term endeavor, and it's going to require a lot of advanced planning and thoughtful implementation. The roadmap does include a timeline that recommends when ideally local governments can implement the actions over the next 6 to 7 years. A lot of these actions, we really expect to work together with all of the jurisdictions and the county working together to implement them. The roadmap is solely advisory, and adoption of the roadmap does not obligate the town to take any specific actions. Rather, it affirms the town's view that the roadmap provides valuable guidance on how local governments might approach next steps in the electrification transition. And I know that you have been provided a resolution to accept the report. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Christine. As Christine mentioned, there is a resolution included in the packet to accept the roadmap as a guiding document on electrification. And as Christine also mentioned, adopting the resolution isn't committing the town to implementing the entire roadmap. This is really a collaborative effort, a county-wide effort. How staff sort of envision the roadmap working for the town is like this year, staff will pull some of the sub-actions that are recommended in the roadmap and bring those to the annual work plan discussion with council. So for example, this year, there are 2 items on the draft 2025 staff work plan that are coming from the roadmap. That is the 2025 building code update and considering green building reach codes that can be a part of that process, and looking into permit discounting programs to incentivize electrification. So that annual work plan process will continue to be a time for council to provide direction and input on which of these strategies we should be implementing here in Corte Madera. Also, as Christine mentioned, this document has gone through a really extensive community engagement and vetting process, including by our Climate Action Committee, who was involved and reviewed the roadmap at several stages. And staff feel it's a really valuable resource and sort of supplement to our climate action plan with strategies to achieve our building electrification goals. And
Thank you.
both
Thank
Christine
you
and I
very
agree.
much, both of you.
And I would just also note, we should recognize that Phoebe was actually at the table working on this roadmap with the county. And so it's great to have a Corte Madera representative working with others in the county on this effort.
Great. So first, are there any questions? Let's start down here. Fred, anything? Eli?
No questions. Thank you.
Down here? No questions? I have just one, and it is the question about PG&E and its gas infrastructure. But first, I want to say, Christine O'Rourke, I have heard your name for years working in the climate space, and I want to thank you. I have seen your work previously, and the fact that you're doing this makes me really happy, and I hope to meet you in person one day. How do we get PG&E to scale back on gas and focus more on making their electrical storm-proof and fireproof and really focusing on the electrical? What can Corte Madera do to help that fight?
Well, I mean, part of this is going to be kind of a natural transition. We can't require all electric buildings, as you may know, because of the Circuit Court ruling. But I think the building code certainly is incentivizing and making it much easier to meet your energy budget if you do all electricity. And there's also a lot of savings because if you don't bring natural gas to your house, then you don't have to pay for that connection. So it can really help to kind of offset the cost of doing everything electrical. So, so I think as time goes on, we are electrifying houses and there's going to come a time when PG&E just starts scaling back the natural gas infrastructure. I think what the town can do is really what we need to do with PG&E is to just make sure that there is enough capacity on the grid in order to meet the demand. And so making them aware of what projects that we have, especially large projects, so that they can plan in advance can be really helpful.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we don't have anyone here in the audience to get questions from. Is there anyone online with their hand raised?
We have a hand raised from Roy Wolford, and I will state for the record that his emailed public comment, including the link that was provided in his email, was uploaded to the website and is available for the public to view, and was also forwarded to Councilmember James Andrews's correct email address earlier today. I'll go ahead and give you your 3 minutes, Roy.
Go ahead, Roy.
Okay, good evening again. I looked at the staff presentation, and all I can say is, wow. It's an awful lot to digest, and I would ask the town council to withhold approving this tonight until you look at the video. It's quite informative. But one thing this document misses, like all the other documents about electrification, that is, what is it going to cost us? What is it going to cost the individual property owners, renters, people who live here? And then also, what is it going to cost to build out the grid so that it can sustain additional electrical consumption? Because a lot of what I saw in this document was reduce, 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 conserve, conserve, conserve. It doesn't show, oh, we're going to reduce the cost of electricity. The lost cost of electricity in California is about 3.5 times that of the national average. So that's got to really come down. And I would suggest you change the name of this particular program from Marin County Electrification Roadmap to the Ivanpah Roadmap. So I'm anglicizing that. But that was a $2.5 billion disaster solar plant that is being closed down now. So that's a waste of $2.5 billion that we could have used in many other areas. And Christine said, we were trying to do a how-to. And I would suggest figure out how to reduce the cost to do this, rather than always increasing the cost. Everything is always increase the cost, conserve, conserve. Let's figure out how to reduce the cost, reduce the cost, reduce the cost. And I think we'd all be in a better position because there's a lot of people that just aren't going to be able to afford this program. And we're talking about having affordable housing. I just see that this is going to be adding to the cost of housing. It's going to make it more unaffordable. So this particular program is stomping on the affordability issue. So please let's get all this together. I've always asked for how much it's going to cost to do this stuff, and I think the town had an expert that came in and said, "Gee, that's a tough one. We don't know." The other one says, "Oh, it's not going to be very much," because I had calculated it's going to cost me $250,000 to electrify everything. So that's replacing the automobiles, the electrical wiring in the house, the panels, solar, everything. Very expensive. How many? And this report shows, hey, there's a third of the people in Marin County can't afford it. The other thing is, this is a whole equity program. So the DEI is heavy into this. I could reduce 50% of the pages by just saying, don't discriminate. Get rid of the equity. There were over
Thank you so
130
much, Roy.
mentions.
Your 3 minutes is up. I
Thank
would
you.
appreciate your
you.
time and your comments. So with that, do we have anybody else online waiting to weigh in?
No additional hands raised and no additional emailed public comment for this item.
And do we have comments from the council? Jim?
I'd like to listen to my other council members first.
Okay. Brett?
Yeah, for me, I can support this. I do have one question though for you. You mentioned that some of the groups you got together were developers and contractors. What kind of input did they give on the process or on the electrification piece of it? Because it seems like that would hit them the hardest potentially from a cost standpoint, especially if, we're looking at building maybe a lot more affordable housing, especially in Marin. I don't know if there's any impact there.
Yeah, so my understanding is that some of like multifamily buildings are more likely to be all electric. And that if you go all electric, like I was saying in the beginning, it can be cheaper because you're not bringing in natural gas infrastructure into the building. As far as the cost goes, I mean, if you're going to electrify your hot water heater or your heating system right now, it can be very expensive. The idea with the regulations says that over time, they will become less expensive, similar to kind of what's going on with electric vehicles right now, as the cost is coming down for electric vehicles. At some point, it does reach parity. And but now it's still early. The developers or the trades are kind of learning how to do this, and so it's can be more expensive right now. But the general feeling is that this is going to be it will be cost parity in the future. And again, some types of building is more cost effective to do electricity upfront than to do mixed fuels.
Okay, thanks. And then Phoebe, this is only a guiding document, correct? So if we had to vary from it or change course, we're good with that, right? For whatever reason.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
I can support this. Again, I was more worried somewhat about the cost, which I appreciate the response there. Especially again, if we're looking at more affordable housing, multifamily projects. And the other thing I think that have reassurance is knowing that anytime we want to, it's not like it's biting this document that we can change course for whatever reason if we have to, good, bad, or the ugly. So I can support it. Thanks.
Eli?
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic effort. I would remind folks that this is a non-binding document that is consistent with adopted town policy and speaks towards addressing climate change, which of course is the only existential threat that our town faces between flooding and wildfire. It speaks directly to greenhouse gas emissions from combustion of natural gas in buildings, which, as we know, is 21% of our town's greenhouse gas emissions. So it's worthwhile to attack one of our major sources of emissions. 3 highlights that I would pull out from the 10 actions recommended in this roadmap are: 1, easy access to information and streamlined permitting for residents. Both of those are good things. 2, financial assistance for people who actually want to do this work. That's critical. And 3, this document speaks to rebuilding the trades workforce in the building trades, and especially, modernizing that workforce for sustainable building, which I think is absolutely key. We have allowed in this country the trades to atrophy to a point where we have a real labor shortage of folks working in the trades. And I think that's a big part of the reason that doing this work is so expensive right now, and that building in general is so expensive, is because of this shortage of qualified labor. So I think I'm really impressed that this document, was written with an eye to some of the core drivers, the underlying fundamental drivers of why is it so expensive right now to do this work. I would also note that getting natural gas out of buildings is much safer in the event of an earthquake or fire, right? Natural gas is of course flammable and combustible. That's why it's used for what it's used for. And it just means that if we have an earthquake or a wildfire, like we saw San Francisco in 1906, it wasn't
the earthquake was incredibly damaging, but the devastation came from the fire, from all the broken gas lines after. I don't know why we would want that stuff in our city big picture. And obviously this is a very long-term transition that has to happen here, but it seems clear that this is the right thing to do, both in terms of climate change and in terms of just straight up public safety. The last thing that I would just say is that I also want to say I appreciate this document's emphasis on affordability. I know we all know this, but it's worth reiterating. It's not enough to just mandate sustainability, right? It's not enough to just mandate that people swap out their water heaters and buy an EV and, whatever. If people can't afford to do it, it's a moot point. And I think, it's so important. And I'm really glad that this document starts to think about low cost financing programs, permitting incentives, lowering permit fees. I think that stuff costs money, but this is important work that needs to be done. Someone has to pay for it, and we can't expect residents to shoulder this burden all by themselves. So I'm really glad that, this document takes these important points into account, and I'm happy to support its adoption.
And as we can all tell, Eli was one of the first people to start talking about climate change seriously in Corte Madera, and actually was behind the formation of our Climate Action Committee. So I think that's where some of that passion comes from. Okay, down here, Rosa.
Yes. Along the lines, I was going to say the same thing. One of the same things that Eli said about this being a great document that is an advisory, but it's what people do need to know as they're making these decisions about what they want to have in their homes. Health is your only true wealth. So if you are thinking about saving money on your health bills are the biggest. And one of the things that impressed me about this was the idea that, not having as many emissions in your home from gas powered appliances is a really big thing. I think about how much there probably is in my house as much as I cook. So I thought that was a very good thing. And I think it also mentioned that there was a lot of changes that could be made without having to upgrade your panel. I thought that was a very interesting piece of the puzzle there. So that affordability could be achieved through that. And then also training the workforce, finding that baseline of why is it so expensive? And with everything, finding people who can do the work is always a big part of the problem of anything you want to do here in Marin County. So I can totally support this document because I think it's very valuable to people. People just need to have this information to make decisions.
Thank you. And Jim?
I'm very concerned that this whole state is dedicated to turning itself into an energy monoculture. And the one thing I remember from college and high school ecology classes is monocultures are not as sustainable as a more diversified energy source. And so I can't support this because, I think the state would be better off slowing down and seeing what has happened to the European economies who have dedicated themselves to doing away with greenhouse gases and judging how to do the balance between maintaining economic growth versus fighting climate change. And I don't think that balance has been studied in this state. I think everybody has sort of bought onto a slogan and they're going to drive it through forever. And so I can't support this.
Okay, thank you very much. My comments are that if I could put the all electrification code in place, I would. And I read the history of how that came about. And it was actually because the Energy Star appliances from the 70s had a caveat legally that said you were not allowed to ban them. And because some of them were gas, there is a law on the books that says we are not allowed to ban gas. And that is how some of this came about. And what I'd like to say is I've been studying climate change and the political ramifications and issues regarding it. And I think the fossil fuel industry has obfuscated, deceived, and paid over $1 billion for PR to plant the doubt about the dangers of natural gas emissions to the planet and to all of life on the planet. Our safe number is 350 parts per million, and I think the big measuring stick out at Maui says we're now at about 420. 350 was safe. It's no longer a question of do you believe in climate change? It is a question of do you understand climate change? And I'd be glad to send you some things to read that I think will help you or help anybody get over that hump. So I can strongly support this, and I'm happy to be outspoken in the effort to get people to understand the health benefits of electrification, not just the environmental health benefits of it. And as far as the training of workers, I absolutely agree, and I would love to find a way if we can support that. I know College of Marin right now is exploring all kinds of ways to bring more building trades and more trades, and I'm sure they're already working on it, but if there's some way we can help accelerate that, all of the damages that get caused in fire and any flooding, all of these things create greater need for a strong, enlightened workforce for construction. So we really should be focused on trying to build that if we can. So just my comments. Do we have a motion from the founder of our climate action group?
I am happy to move adoption of resolution number 05-2025.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews,
No.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries.
thank you. Okay, so I think that just leaves actually our final actual business item tonight, and that is a recap of the January 23rd Strategic Planning Workshop and acceptance of the 2025 work plan. And before I turn it over to staff, I would just like to say, wow, it was a great session. We worked from 9 in the morning until 3. And we got so much done and had so many great conversations. And I walked out of there wanting to have like 6 or 7 more conversations. So I have learned that there is such a thing as too many good ideas. And what Adam has promised is that those will get dropped into the bucket for next year, and we'll get to talk about them again and continue to talk about ideas to see which way we want to go and which things we want to support. But with that, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you, Mayor Ravazio and council members. First off, yes, thank you all for your time. I think it was now a week and a half ago about. I know it was a long day, and I do think we got a lot accomplished, which obviously the goal of that entire meeting was to make sure that staff's work over the next 9 months, well, I don't know, 10 months, 11 months at this point, is really aligned with the town council priorities. And so that I felt like we had a lot of good conversations around ensuring that was that we were headed in the right direction and that we can hit the ground running sort of after this meeting this evening. So with that, I'm not going to go through all of the, the staff report lays out, and we do have the draft work plan up on the screen. We certainly also discussed town council priorities, the larger work program areas that are really listed into the 3 different buckets there, all of them being important. And we discussed this, just relative importance should other priorities sort of come into focus during the course of the year. And we have to make some decisions about where to focus our energies. So again, just for the public out there as well that may be listening, this is not a listing of all the work that staff does. These are really items that are initiatives for this year and the following years, advancing the work, advancing our mission as a town, and advancing sort of some of the policies that have been adopted over the course of the last several years. It's not a static document. It's sort of a one that evolves and can evolve. And then the other thing I'll just mention, we did mention and committed to sort of coming back in July and August this year and just giving the council an update of where we are with respect to the work plan. So with that, I'm going to
Just get questions from the council.
I'm going to turn it over.
Did
to
everyone
sort of
have a chance to review the work plan before the revised work plan before tonight? And do you have questions?
No questions, but I have a comment because I want to pitch another priority. I think we could
Okay.
have. So I'll wait.
That's okay. We can do last minute pitches.
I'll wait
Just
till we get
ask-
to comments.
Last minute. Hail Mary passes. Okay. Do you have any
No
questions? Questions? Okay, great. What about nobody in the audience? So is there anybody online who might have any questions or comments?
We don't have any hands raised from attendees online. Actually, a hand just went up from Emily Charlie.
Emily, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't see that my video is on for some reason, so sorry about that. Either way, good evening. My name is Emily Charlie. I live on El Camino Drive on the east side of town. And while on the Parks and Recreation Commission, my comments this evening are personal. I first wanted to thank Tim for his tireless efforts and able representation of the commission's views when presenting to the City Council, and also for your careful and thoughtful consideration, City Council. I was really pleased to note inclusion of many of Parks and Rec's commissioner recommendations in the work plan. That said, there was only one item related to the east side of Corte Madera at Cove Park. I believe that my fellow Parks and Recreation Commissioners were supportive of my hopes to ensure a balanced approach to funding allocation. And this evening, I raise personally to make that same plug that I made to them, but now of you. To that end, I would ask that before adding any town park plaza enhancement work plan items, that the City Council first consider items that Parks and Recreation Commission discussed for Cove Park. So let me explain. In addition to placing and replacing and or adding picnic benches and tables at Cove Park, that's the lone item on the work plan for the East Side Parks. We also discussed the pathway connecting the neighborhood and the parking lot to the Cove School blacktop. I do recognize there's joint use agreements and other things. I'll leave that aside. So let me just again keep this sort of high level. The Cove Park is both a highly used and very wet park, suffering from all the same field hurdles of Town Park and then some. So having no connecting pathway results in less functional use by those hoping to walk from one side to the other, and also more destructive use by those hoping to maybe save their shoes and instead bike across the grass. So with that brief comment, I will close by reiterating my deep appreciation for all of your efforts and again, plug for the East Side Parks, a little bit extra love if I could. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess it would be good if we can get Adam maybe to just give a response to the resident who just spoke.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are obviously a lot of deficiencies that we've recognized in the Park and Rec facility master plan. I believe this is an existing path that's being referenced. I'm not specific. I'm not exactly sure, but I believe it's maybe an existing path at Cove Park. And certainly those are evaluated by our public works team and maintenance crew. If there are specific issues, happy to take those into consideration as we allocate resources for what we called, I think, in our facilities master plan, sort of the deficiencies list. And there is budget for fixing things as they come up around town. And so take that into consideration.
Great. So we can,
Obviously, we'll listen to the council if they want to prioritize and make that a focus.
right. Well, since it's just a comment, we really shouldn't get into too much conversation about it. But anything else online from anybody waiting? Okay, so I guess we can go to comments on the plan. Go Fred. I know you said you had one.
I'll pitch it. I think I pitched it during the Strategic Planning Commission regarding vegetation management, where I think before COVID, I think her name was Martha Orth. She was actually running, we hired her, I think, part-time as a contractor, so she wasn't a full-time employee. She was doing a lot of work, running crews around town, putting dumpsters up on Christmas Tree Hill, Chapman Park, to encourage people to clear out vegetation and all that kind of stuff. We don't have it on our work plan as a priority. I think it should be a priority, especially not just in light of the fires in LA, but just, I think it's the right thing to do for the community. And I actually went back because I'm a numbers person. In 2021, we budgeted $446,000 we spent on the sales tax override money for disaster recovery, including vegetation management. For 24-25, we budgeted $232,000. So we've cut that budget in half. So to me, we're almost taking a step backwards on vegetation management, where we should be taking a step forward and getting much more aggressive on this stuff and helping our residents do as much as they can for home hardening, zero space, all that. So I just wanted to pitch that again, because to me, again, it's disaster preparedness, including vegetation management. It needs to be a priority.
So if I could ask the attorney, can we discuss this now, or because it's not actually on the agenda, do we need to wait and talk about it later, or?
I'm looking to add it to the work plan if that helps Amy or Adam.
We are discussing the work plan, so anticipating potential changes to it. So I think we can have a discussion. It may be that staff may not have all the information at hand because they weren't aware of this. And so I would just take that into consideration.
I can comment on that if that's helpful for the council, but and again, nothing's being decided in terms of how much to focus on this, other than, you remember the strategic planning workshops about lining up our agendas to have these discussions as a council and as a community. But that being said, we do have on the next agenda a presentation from our Central Marin Fire Chief, Ruben Martin, who specifically will be talking about veg management. I've already worked on some of the slides. He has the pie chart of funding, how much funding has been there or in the last year's budget. And I thought it was a good time to actually have that conversation, because we are going into budget season and can discuss, that's maybe instead of putting that on as a presentation, which usually isn't a discussion item, we can maybe formulate that into sort of a discussion around budgeting as well, and make some decisions or direction around that.
Would it be like an amendment to the work plan, or it would just be something that's
tonight? Yeah, it would, if there's an ask to add something to the work plan, I think you can go ahead and just, put it as line item number X. I did make the note in the staff report. There's a section for disaster preparedness. So I think that would fall under this section. I forget, I think it's the second category. It's in category 1, but I think it's, no, I think it's the
climate action adaptation.
Yes. There you go. Thank you.
okay? So just brief conversation on this, Jim. What would you like to add?
One of the reasons why the brush clearing in 2019 and 2020 was so successful is that it was a town staff person, even though she was just a contractor, but she was focused on Corte Madera only. Everybody else who's sort of working on wildfire has multiple jurisdictions. And my question would be, who on town staff is going to be responsible for this? And you probably can't answer it now, but I think you should start thinking about, who do we want to be made responsible for clearing the brush?
Okay. Do you have something else to add? Either Eli or Rosa?
Yeah. So when this does come back for us to look at, which I guess, I don't know if that's at the next meeting or not. What I'd like to know is, it sounds like a lot more was spent. You said, it sounded like twice as much was spent or, but what I want to know is what was the prior amount doing that was different than what the lower amount was doing? And did we find that we've actually needed less, that we actually didn't use all the money that was allotted to it? I just kind of want to know, because that's a big swing. And I can't imagine it was just, cut for no reason. But anyway, I just want to know specifically what it went to. Did it all go to brush? Because both of those numbers seem really high to me for just the brush part, as opposed to any other mitigation for fire. So I'm just curious about that.
Right. And we can certainly get into all this at the next meeting discussion.
Anything you like?
Yeah, just my thoughts. First, to the public comment we received, I think point well made and well taken.
This is just on the wildfire management, if we can.
Sure. Yeah.
For now.
Sure. So on that, I would just say I agree with both Fred and Rosa. I think, vegetation management is okay. Natural disaster is like primarily like for us, like flood, earthquake, and fire, right? So fire is a huge part of it. Vegetation management and home hardening are like the two main parts of fire. So I think vegetation management absolutely has got to be a top priority. I just had the same questions as Rosa of like, where did that funding go? Where did that work go? Was there a conscious decision made to end it? Why did it end, or why did the funding decrease? Was it intended to be one time? Were we clearing brush that hasn't regrown yet, and so that work doesn't need to come back? You serve on MWPA, so you may know some of this stuff that I don't. But I think I just would like a little bit more background. But I definitely agree, big picture. I think vegetation management has got to be a top priority under disaster preparedness.
Okay, and I would like to agree that it's really important. I just spent the last month down in Los Angeles, got there the day before the fires. And so I know how close it feels, even though it's far away. And something I actually wrote to Adam about last minute, it was sorry I didn't get to you sooner, but I just wanted to know if there was a way that we could, with maybe some of our revenues left over from last year, if we could create a fund just for Corte Madera residents who are on fixed incomes or unable to pay for the clearance that should be done on their properties. I think that would be really helpful. I have heard from a lot of older people right here in Chapman Park who, got the visit from fire, who said, you got to do this and you got to do that. And they ended up spending $15,000 and still weren't making everybody happy. And I think helping people do the work, both financially and referring good. I mean, I don't know if we can get Flores or somebody. You can't. It's a tricky situation because we can't be in the business of referring some companies and not others. I know, but I don't know. I think just some more work can be done on how to help people do that work.
If I can comment, I think what I'm going to look for is language for the work plan that we add, and like line item number 57 or whatever it's going to be, or we'll stick it in somewhere. But it sounds to me like we're saying something to the effect of consideration of additional financial resources for Corte Madera specific vegetation management or programs.
There you
like
go.
So we can include that keyword consideration, and then we'll come back and consider. I think the appropriate people to discuss this is going to be our fire chief, perhaps Todd Lando. But a lot of the answers can be discussed or provided at our next meeting. And maybe out of that, we start to discuss sort of direction around programs and budgeting, how we resource this.
If I can, just two other things. You may just
Get the last
Just two other things. You may just want to add the word either plan or programs in there, not just financial considerations. And then Eli, one thing to your point, on MWPA, there was a lot of initial work like with shaded fuel breaks and all that, but they also realized there's a point of time where they may have to morph from new projects into going back and maintaining what they did. So I don't know if it's the same thing in Corte Madera. We may have done vegetation management, but if it was 5 years ago, we're into a maintenance routine. So it's a cycle.
Absolutely.
So thanks.
Okay, so Eli, is there anything that you want to pitch to be added to the work plan?
Not not that I've independently originated. I just wanted to say to the public comment that we received,
Wait, no, that's coming up next. Oh, no, go ahead.
well, okay.
I was just gonna get everybody to make their contributions to the work plan and then we can comment.
Okay, I guess I'm lending support to a proposed sort of contribution to the work plan,
Okay, there you go.
which is just, Cove Park is like, I would say easily the most used park in East Corte Madera, where we have thousands of residents. So I would agree with just the concept of being mindful, as we're planning where we're investing in our parks, that we're, being equitable, across the community.
And anything down here on things you would like to see on the work plan that aren't there or?
Can I speak to more the structure of the meeting, of the strategic plan meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so toward that, I would like to suggest that we limit council weighing in until all presentations are made and that each presenter gets to go through their entire presentation before we ask questions or make comments. I think it would save time. And I think a lot of times the questions or things that we have in mind will already be answered if we just let it flow, let the presenters give all their, and we might get out before 3.
And that will be a
Thank you.
perfect thing for the new mayor to implement
Yes.
next year.
And yeah.
You're not allowed to say that she's gonna be mayor.
I did.
And please, feedback like that's very helpful so that we continue to improve these workshops.
Anything, Jim, on the work plan? Okay. Okay, great. Well, I'll just finish the conversation then by saying there was one thing that I'm hoping that we can continue, that there's been some discussion about, and that is really managing, kind of looking at how we store things for the park and the recreation center and the barn, and we've got the boathouse, and it's not the current staff's fault, but there's been sort of a tendency to be a little bit of a pack rat when it comes to Christmas decorations from the 80s and things like that are still in storage. So I think just looking at that with an eye of possibly emptying out the barn would be a nice thing to add. And as far as the Cove Park, Emily, I totally support you. The last time I went over to Cove Park with a group to figure out what kind of improvements people wanted, there were a lot of people there with dogs who absolutely did not want a dog park, and they didn't want anything. They didn't want more pathways. So as long as the neighbors are going to come out together and support changes there, I think there wouldn't be any problem with that. And if I lived on the east side, I would be pushing for Nugget to do a nice outdoor seating area that feels like Cafe Verde, and we could have a community cafe on both sides of town. And I think Nugget would really look at that. So I totally support giving, I do think a lot of the stuff that's here, just because we have Mankey Park and Town Park and all of that's on the west side of town, that's where the money goes. But with some creativity, I think the east side of town could be getting some of this Parks and Recreation money. And I think Emily's on the Parks Commission, right? So I totally support, making sure that the bay side of town gets a fair share of the proceeds from our wonderful retail sales tax. So I think that was all I had. Yeah. So, do we need to finish up or?
Well, so based on what I'm hearing, we do, if we want to accept this tonight, I'd like to work on the language so that it can be included in an amended resolution and we can move on, not have to bring this back at the next meeting.
Great.
So I think with respect to, so thank you, Lorena, for pulling this up. I think with respect to the vegetation management, it's consideration for additional financial resources and or plans and programs, something like that for Corte Madera specific.
Financial resources and programs.
Corte Madera specific vegetation management programs.
For Corte Madera specific vegetation management. Yeah, because that sounds great.
Yeah. So we got that one. I will comment on the storage situation, which Mayor Ravazio brought up. I'll say that's something that we're already sort of thinking of. I know our public works team and Tim, something we've discussed last year of just exploring what might be a better solution out there. So it's something that I think we could do is if there's an exploration, we could leave it at that. That's something that we're sort of considering already. But I would just say with respect to any sort of exploration of storage, it's got to be like a better solution than what we currently have. And so I think that's more something that staff could just continue that work in terms of
Absolutely.
exploration of how to improve our storage
As long as it's on the radar.
areas over there. So it's on the radar.
Yeah.
And we could add that if we wanted to specifically to the work plan. I leave that to the council as sort of a continuation of exploration of our storage needs and potential solutions at around, I guess, the community center park. It's really there's public works storage behind Park Madera Center. There's the barn. There's also a sort of temporary solution for the football club. With the container and so on. And so it's sort of cleaning that up as best we can. So that we can add that to. It's more of I think that's fine.
And while you're doing that, just one more comment. I was so gratified the way the council all came together to support the Chamber of Commerce. And at the time I was thinking we were doing it because the chamber is something really good for the community and all of that. But realizing how important our sales tax dollars are to us and the chamber's job is to promote the businesses in town, I really like that partnership. And they've got storage needs too. And if they're going to be included in a future building, we're going to need to incorporate that storage aspect too, perchance. I don't know.
And then on the public comment, I think, again, there may be some misunderstanding. I think the deficiencies are with the existing facilities. So there's an existing path. And I'm getting some confirmation that I think the comment was about creating a new path to sort of a certain additional area of the park. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Rebecca, please go ahead.
Help on this a little bit. Thank you,
Tim's on.
Mayor Ravazio. Tim Barry, our Parks and Rec Director, is also on the line if we need to explain further, but the line item currently included in the work plan is line item 32, which says rehabilitate existing picnic area adjacent to east side of Cove parking lot and playground. So if you spend time over there, when you come in from the parking lot off of Paradise, there's the baseball field. There's a little pathway that takes a jog to the right and goes near the existing picnic area, but doesn't go to the picnic area. So those picnic tables aren't currently accessible via that path. And the thought was rehabilitate that area, provide more seating for parents and families who are maybe watching children on the blacktop, maybe watching the baseball game, but also connect that pathway through the picnic area, access the picnic tables, and then continue on to the blacktop so that students riding their bikes aren't riding through the grass, which we do. We passed the ordinance saying that no bikes.
So do we just need to add that verbiage to that, like another comma saying and include?
I don't think we should get too much into the details
Also,
here, but
pathways are considered a deficiency. So I think that language didn't make its way into this item.
I would keep it general because this should go through Parks and Recreation, and there should be a existing process for Emily and her fellow commissioners to bring this project forward so that it could have been on the work plan. So maybe it is, but just in a different way.
What I get, I think, concerned about when we're adding new things, that becomes a larger potentially a larger project for our public works team with additional outreach. If it's fixing existing
Right.
stuff, it's a lot easier and simpler. And so when we're thinking about the work plan, that's the boundary I've sort of set in terms of like new stuff is going to be a public, there's more process, there's more outreach, et cetera. This may
Okay,
be
but-
something that's easy. I just can't say.
Yeah, but one thing I would like to ask the council, where I feel strongly is, if we end up having a year where all of the top box stuff becomes so much bigger and we don't get to some of this, sort of amenities types of work, we can push it off till next year. I don't want you to feel like, you have to accomplish everything on this work plan. It's a plan. And when we come in January and we come in the middle of summer, you can come and say, hey, we wanted to get this started and this started and this started, but we're going to bump those till next year because the year's running out and we only have so much time and money,
I guess I'll just say we're covered by what's already in the work plan. I think the comment is, well, we understand it now. And so we'll consider that as we sort of develop the
Work done.
So Adam, do you understand the modifications that we've had a lot of conversations here? Do you know what the
So
modifications are?
I think we have, yes, I think we had 3 and 2 new ones and one I'm saying is covered already by our existing number.
So could I move
32.
acceptance with modifications and we'll go on?
Thank you. And if I can,
very good.
You want to say?
Second.
I would,
Do we have a second? Or
I just wanted to say also and emphasize that it's extremely valuable for staff to be able to communicate with the council in the form that we had at the workshop. And I know it's a long day, but staff really appreciates it. And so thank you again.
Feeling is mutual.
Yes, I really appreciate it too. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, or are we waiting for actual copy to look at this?
I believe we have a motion in a second.
That's correct. There's a motion in a second. I just wanted to verify that the wording is okay for the new item, continue exploration of storage area management for existing storage locations.
Yeah, I think it's
Good to me.
continue exploration of storage area of existing storage area improvements.
And it's Parks and Recreation specifically, but,
That's okay. Improvements. It's
okay, so we have a motion and a second?
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa. Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, I think that was a good conversation. Thanks, everybody, for hanging in there for that one. Okay, so we're down to council reports. So we will start with the town manager.
okay. Great. Well, we didn't have an audience here to pick up our flyers that we printed out in the back, but there is a repair fair on Saturday, February 8th, 1 to 4 p.m. You can sign up and it's really, I think it's a pretty cool thing where you can actually, if there's something to fix in your house and you need it, don't know what to do with it, you can actually schedule an appointment and bring it down. And there's like a bunch of people who know how to fix stuff at our community center and reuse it rather than throw it out. So I think it's, I love it. You can see, I like to use my equipment for a long time, get some wear and tear on it, but I think that's a great, it's also a nice community building, event. I think, I'd be very interested to see who comes to that from our community. So that's one. And then I did want to, mention for Tim, there is the Royal Ball this Friday evening. I think I've already heard that is it already sold out at this point, or are there additional tickets? It's very few tickets left, but it's been already subscribed to. So that's this Friday evening at the community center as well.
He wrote me and said they needed some more royalty there.
Oh, well, there you go.
And I happen to have this really great crown at home, so
those are just 2 events. And like I said, I was going to mention that we also will, we will have our fire chief as well presenting at the next meeting. So we'll figure that out, how that discussion should fit into the agenda. With that, I will end my report, other than one last thing, and I mentioned this, I know, in an email, but we did launch our finance director recruitment on Friday. It's out. We've already had a couple of applicants, send in their resumes and whatnot and apply. So that's about a 3-week process, and that's underway.
Who wants to go first?
Okay, in no particular order, MCCMC, I think you were there. We got a report from Jason Weber, the Marin Fire Chief, Mark Brown, head of the wildfire, and Steve Torrance from Marin Emergency Management. And basically, they just repeatedly stressed that given that we're in a fire-prone area, you need defensible space around your house. House hardening is good. Don't be surprised if there's a fire in Marin, because we've had them multiple times before. In fact, in 1900, there was something known as the Corte Madera fire, which I hadn't heard about. Get prepared, mentally prepared to deal with an evacuation if you ever had to. And then on January 24, went to the TAM meeting. They reported that the Bellum off-ramp preliminary work is currently underway, and they expect construction to start sometime in late spring. Okay. And then they brought up, and this also overlaps with the Safe Routes to Schools. They brought up ABA 1778, which gives Marin County, and I believe a county down around San Diego, maybe it's even San Diego County, the authority to write ordinances regulating e-bikes. And the chiefs of police are drafting a model ordinance that they're going to ask the county and all the jurisdictions in the county to pass. That is it currently written, it would require e-bikes, basically folks riding it will be required to wear helmets. And also class 2, which is e-bikes with a throttle, okay, they will basically be banned from children. So if you have anybody who's thinking of getting an e-bike and they've got a child, tell them no throttle. It's got to be pedal activated. And let me think what else. That in terms of implementation time, they're hoping to get it fully implemented by the start of school in the fall. And part of the delay is there's various notifications required with 1778, and that takes time to do the notifications. So we should probably, here in Corte Madera, expect to see the model ordinance sometime this late spring, maybe early summer. So sort of save space in our agenda for the future council meetings for it. So.
Thank you. Down here.
Yeah, I attended the MCCMC meeting, and I also attended the Safe Routes to School meeting that Jim did. And then just one last thing is that Intergenerational Center, we're meeting tomorrow. Hopefully there's progress on that front, just to get that out there. Thanks.
On January 28th, I attended an MCE board meeting. On January 30th, I attended a Climate Resilience in the North Coast conference up in Rohnert Park. It was really interesting to learn about some of the work being done locally by different state and local agencies and nonprofits to protect habitat in Marin County for endangered species. February 3rd, I attended a Cal Cities meeting and an MCE executive committee meeting. And earlier today, RJ and I participated in a Zoom meeting with a consultant who is helping Central Marin Sanitation Agency develop this proposal that I've mentioned for San Rafael San to potentially sort of soft consolidate with that agency. So once there's actually a draft proposal, we'll bring it back for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, so on January 21st, I attended a meeting on January 21st, I attended a meeting about the 240 Tamil Vista project overview. On the 23rd, the street strategic planning meeting, of course. And then I don't have the date down for the MMCMC or MC.
29th.
The 29th, I attended that meeting. And yes, very, very informative about fire hardening.
So I attended a few of those meetings, but one specific thing I'd like to talk about. First of all, I thought the repair fair was a great idea. Was that Phoebe's? I heard it came out of our Climate Action Committee.
Zero Waste Marin.
What a great idea. Really, I love to see that kind of stuff happening here. I was down at Cal Cities while I was in LA. I thought I would make myself useful and went to the Cal Cities conference. And it was really sad because it was obvious that the big fires in LA were going to zap a lot of stuff right out of the budget. So they did a live time, like, here's what's happening to the budget conference. And it went from where it was last night to where it is today. And most of the homeless programs were cut out. Most of the funds to support affordable housing, anything that was dispensable is going because they know they're going to need it all for the fires.
Was state budget?
State budget.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they did a wonderful thing, as they often do, on the elements of a successful relationship on the council. And I know we have that in spades a lot of ways, but there was just one thing that came to me that really made me think I should just remind everybody that it's our responsibility as council members to review the work ahead of time and also ask the staff any really significant questions that we have ahead of time, just so as Michael Dupar and John Dupar and Michael Lappert said to my husband when he first got on the council, he said, don't you read it all ahead of time. And if you got questions, you call the town manager and don't make us sit there and listen to all of your questions. We will not do that. So I do think it's a matter of respect to the staff that we ask the questions ahead of time.
And to your fellow council members.
Pardon me?
And to your fellow council members.
We're not allowed to talk.
No. Respect to your fellow council.
Oh, definitely respect to fellow council members and all staff. And one thing that was really interesting, guys, they had a big talk about the Brown Act. And there is this contingent, they're small, but they're vocal, who say that we, council members, are deprived of our First Amendment rights by the Brown Act, that we're the only political body that's told that we can't talk to each other. Look at Amy.
She's like, yeah.
They were popular.
Yes, it's a good theory.
Okay, well, good theories, that's where it all starts.
Can I make one more?
I would be happy to. I'm ready to go to jail. I'm at the age to go to jail.
Can I make one more before you close?
Yeah, go ahead.
I really forgot to mention a very important event. February 13th at 4 p.m. there will be the grand opening of the Scotty Lap skate park.
Oh, wow.
So please put that onto your calendars. 4 p.m. grand opening of the Scotty Lap skate park.
Rain or shine.
It's actually sort of a sad occasion, but also celebratory. But it is the 3-year anniversary of Scotty's passing. So that's why the date was chosen. And so flyers will come out soon and they're going to be advertising it over the next week or so.
You know what? That's right at Valentine's Day or the day before Valentine's Day. And this whole project, Born of Love, right? Can we get just a small budget to do like some little chocolate hearts that we pass out at the opening? $20.
I think they have an whole organization.
They're going to do it. Are they running it?
And
Okay.
he always wore the
I'll bring
glasses.
some chocolate hearts.
I like that. I like that answer.
Wow. Oh, pink glasses. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, this was fun.
This was fun.
So I think we are down to the discussion of draft agenda for the upcoming town council meeting. Any comments on it? Anything? Anybody? Okay, well then I think we are adjourned. And no sanitary district meeting tonight because there was no business to come before us.